go ahead and click Start a New Android Studio Project. And you can give it a name if you want, but we're just going to test again, so that's up to you. Now click Next. Next again. Next. And finish. Now, last time we talked about some error checking. And we really didn't get to the methods, procedures, functions, subroutines, whatever you want to call them, in depth. Kind of alluded to it. Now we're going to create the app again for calculating simple interest, but we're going to use a method to calculate it, subroutine. So delete hello world. We want to throw on 3 text, and I'll make them numbers. Maybe. Yeah, I'm lying. Let's choose decimal.
Number decimal?
Number decimal.
No, text. Okay. Texas?
Now after you get to... Actually, I'll move those over because we want a label on each one of them.
Yes. It just stopped. You shouldn't have said that. Break down the years. What's the equal distance?
Oops, I chose the wrong one. I meant to choose text view. Let's try that again. Then we want a button on there also.
So we need.
And then we want to write our answer back out. And you could write it out to a text view if you wanted to. Now, interest is equal to principal times rate times time. So this first blank should be for principal. This should be rate. This should be time. Then our button, we can change it to say calculate. And we're calculating interest. So in the text view here, I'll say the text is going to be interest. And this is where we'll put our result. So I'm going to just set it equal to 0 to begin with. Now come back up here to principal, and remember we can change the ID. So I'll change that to ED underscore principal. And this one I'll change to ED underscore rate. And this one I'll change to ED underscore time.
Oh, 12 points.
This is a text view, so I'll do TV underscore interest.
TV.
TV, text view.
Oh no. I did it wrong.
Now I'm going to choose Infer Constraints. And it tries to make a guess what to position everything to according to where it's at on the screen. In terms of whether you go to the side, top, in relation to what's to the side over here, so forth.
I got 3 EDs. And then you guys do the interest one for that 0. TV. Okay.
Pretty good?
I believe so.
Okay. Now let's just run it just to make sure that everything looks okay.
Whoa. Guest isn't online after 7 seconds retrying.
That's okay. If you look down at the bottom, it'll say Gradle build running.
Compilation failed. See the compiler error output for details.
Compilation error. It's interesting. What does it say for the details?
A lot of stuff. Org.gradle.api.task. Whatever. Execution failed for task. And then until.concurrent thread pool its executor run worker.
You haven't updated anything, have you?
No. Same like expected thing.
Oftentimes when you get an error, you can double click it. In this case, so. Right click.
Oh, I have 2 text views.
Well, that's fine.
That's fine. Unexpected token. Because there's a space.
I think you put space somewhere.
I think I did in text view. Yeah, I did.
You should be able to catch that. That would be one line code to check for.
now it's it.
Don't know what that one line of code would be, but it's a simple check.
I'm still getting the same Java compiler to errors. Error.
Check your other names. Make sure there's no spaces in any of the other ones.
Yeah, there isn't. Edit.
Did you find any other?
No, there's no other traces. I'm just getting errors. Expected. File numbers locally are generated and should not be edited. I changed it from a space.
Did you change it in the interface over here?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Try.
it didn't update.
Do a build rebuild project, or possibly a clean project, if that doesn't work. Yeah, some of those files you never want to actually change them directly. When you double click it, it may point out a potential error. Now, if you called it a text view,
it's telling me to do Alt Enter.
did the name of it? Did you actually call it a text view?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Give it a different name. Text view is a reserved word in the Android Studio. So
I just named it text_view1.
Oh, text_view1.
Yeah.
That should be okay, as long as you don't. Well, I'll go ahead and show this, and then I'll come look at it closer, see if I can figure out what's going on with it. You might try to delete that edit text and add it back in.
Okay.
Could be deleting a reference and then adding it back in. We'll correct it. And when you add it back in, don't change the name, the ID on it. Just see if that takes it then. I forget. I think didn't you put a space in your name, or was it JC? Was it JC? Yeah. I think when you got rid of your space, didn't it work though?
I think so.
Yeah.
You can even see because the compiler editor thing is like really high up here. Get down. The Infer Constraints thing like jacked up all my. How do I delete the Infer Constraints?
You click.
Time was the last one.
Did that work to re-add it back in?
I'm still doing so. That's cool.
But we'll go ahead and, like I said, I'll take a closer look at it after I show this. Now, if we add our public void button click, then do our view v, that's our standard, beginning curly bracket, closing curly bracket, and do alt enter to import the code for the view. Then We had 3 edit texts. Oops. Edit text T1 is equal to edit text find view by ID r.id.edit and principal. Now that's not very meaningful, is it? T1. So maybe more meaningful name might be I don't want to use ed underscore principal because I don't want T1 underscore principal. Edit text T2 see principal rate equals edit text find view by ID r.id. Start typing ed rate. Edit text T3 underscore principal rate time equals edit text find view by ID r.id.edit time. Now we also had a text view. So if I type text view, let's say T4 underscore, this is going to be our interest, equals text view find view by ID r.tv r.id dot tv underscore interest. It's bizarre. I didn't do an alt enter. It went ahead and imported the libraries anyway. Now we'll declare some variables. Doubles principal, rate, time, interest. Now I want to bring in principal. So principal is equal to double dot parse double T1 underscore principal dot get text dot toString. Kind of what we did before, except we had integer, didn't we? Rate is equal to double dot parse double T2 underscore rate dot get text dot toString. And time is equal to double dot parse double T3 underscore time dot get text dot toString. If you have to type out every character on that gets tedious. Again, use that code completion. It pops up just as soon as you typed in enough letters to have the focus on whatever you want. You press your tab to do that, choose that item, and do the code completion.
Code completion is always like the worst for me because it always puts the wrong thing.
You have to make sure you type enough to get the one highlighted you want.
Yeah.
If you press tab too soon, you'll get, like I say, get the wrong stuff. I forget which editor it was I was in the other day. I was trying to do the code completion. Even when I typed it all out, it was choosing the wrong thing. I think it was Xcode. It was driving me crazy. I finally just typed it in manually. Okay, so now interest is going to equal to principal times rate times time. And I want to write it back out. So I got T4 interest dot set text double dot to string of interest. I'm going to stop my emulator, click the little red square up here, and run it again. Oh, I didn't. Yeah, let me do a cancel. Why can I never remember that? Okay, choose calculate, go to your on button click. Looking right at it. All right, there it is, on click. Do the drop down, choose button click. Now run it. I assume yours probably won't work, Liam, but
It's working.
is it working? Did deleting that and add it back in fix it?
I think so.
Usually that does work. Occasionally it leaves some residue left over from the first instance, and then it's hard to get fixed then.
I don't know if it was in the first place.
Okay, principal 5,000, rate is 0.03, time is 10. Choose calculate. And I guess that's right. 15,000 times 0.03. But anyway, it gives us our interest. I'm going to stop the emulator there, so I click the little red square here. Go back to my code. Now that's nothing new. That's what we've already seen. Now you can take that code that you just did, and you can put it into a separate method, subroutine, function, whatever you want to call it. So up here I can type public void, and I'll say calculate interest. Then do a beginning curly bracket and closing curly bracket. So then, if I take the code down here, and maybe starting from all this right here, actually make it simpler. I'll just take this this code right here, last two lines. If I do an edit cut and come up here and do an edit paste, now down here we're going to call it. So down here I'm going to say calculate interest. Now there's a problem here. First one is that interest is not defined. It's defined down here. When you define a variable within this button click, it's only accessible within this button click. That's called a local variable. So you can't access it in another method. Well, that's easy to get around. you declare interest up here instead of down here. So I'll get rid of the interest down here. Now you see interest is no longer in red. You can have a concept known as global variables. It's not quite global, but global variables would be where I declare it up here at the very top for our main activity. I say it's not quite global because if you have other activities, then it can't necessarily access that variable. Now we got another issue.
All of them individually.
Well, the principal and rate and time is actually going to be brought in down here.
Okay.
So what we can do is we can bring those in as what's called parameters. This is your method name, and within the parentheses here is what we're going to tell them to bring in. Typical format in every programming language is you tell what variable type. So it's going to be a double, and I'll bring in principal. And then I'll have double rate and double time.
You have to type out double for each one.
Yeah. I haven't found a way to short that. If you try to do double principal, comma, rate, comma, time, it'll give you an error. I'm not saying there isn't a way. Because they're constantly evolving and changing, making things better.
You didn't even do double.
I talked about this before. Remember the example I gave you where I said somebody's going to go up to the front and get water, mail, whatever it is. And me telling you what to get is the parameter. And then you could return something. This isn't going to return anything. It's just going to write it out to the screen. But that's what these parameters are. So down here, we got another error. The calculated interest, we need to tell it what it's based upon. So we're going to type principal, comma, rate, comma, time.
I think up here. Right?
Was it Barry Die?
I don't know, because it wasn't even plugged in. It was just like hanging on the side.
Oh.
It was plugged in, but it wasn't for the wall adapters.
See, I know you're not supposed to leave laptops plugged in because they'll catch a fire. But do those power supplies matter at all?
Not at all.
So you can leave those plugged in?
They have a fail safe.
Do they? Okay.
Mine does.
I've been unplugging them from the desk just because.
I know MacBook's down. If you leave them plugged in, I need to get a new battery because I left my MacBook plugged in over.
Oh, I don't mean laptops. I mean those actual little boxes there.
Oh, no, you can leave those plugged in. They have a fail safe.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we got our calculated interest here. There's one issue still left, T4 underscore interest. And the reason why is we got it declared right here. Well, I can take this, cut it, and come up here and paste it.
The text view.
The text view, right. Now this is an example of calling a method where it's not returning anything. That's what this void means. Void means don't return anything. Just go off and do it, and then you're done. It'd be kind of like if I told JC, go run up front, do whatever. But don't return anything. So he goes off, has fun, comes back. He's not bringing anything back. So that's the idea behind the void. Yeah. So now if I run this, let's just confirm that I didn't break it in the process.
Mine failed. Oh, you fool. TF4 interest doesn't stay.
Let me check mine. I'll take a look.
Yeah, my phone's up.
3,000.
You don't put the text view TF interest, you put it above double interest.
10. Okay, so it's still working there.
Well,
You figured it out?
Yeah. Mine's not loading the app. Just like opened the emulator, but it didn't run the app.
Is it still building down at the bottom with the?
Oh Lord. Error method calculate interest in class. Main activity cannot be applied to given types. Required double found. No argument.
Did you change down here when you passed in the parameters?
Did I change it? Oh no, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, because down there you still have this the beginning parentheses, closing parentheses, so you have no parameters. And
I had to retype it. Yeah.
now notice the principal and rate and time that I have down there are the same names that I used up here for my parameters. They do not have to be. Some people get in the habit of using the same name in both places, and
It's not bringing the principal rate and time stuff down. You have to type it in myself.
bring it down where?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
So I have to type in principal rate and time.
Yeah, I typed these in down here. Now, code completion allowed me to not type it all, but. Now this example really doesn't show the power of it. It's just we took some lines of code here and we just copied it up here. How does that help us? Let's say I wanted to modify this, and if you want to, is everybody working now?
Yeah, mine works.
Yours works. Okay. So go ahead and take a picture of this if you want a picture of a method that doesn't return anything. Now we're going to change this. So go back to our design here, and I want to calculate for the interest. I want to maybe take rate, so I'll leave that alone. But then I want to do rate plus 1, rate plus 2, rate plus 3%. So I have those on there. So I need some more text views. So I'll drop more text views on here.
How many more?
3 more there, and then I'm going to need 3 more over here. I can do a better job lining things up than that. Okay. Then you probably want to delete your constraints, clear all your constraints, and then click your magic wand and reset everything back up. Now this right here, I'm going to change what it says to interest, and I'll put plus 1%. So we're going to take the original rate that was put in, we're going to add 1% to it. Here, I'm going to take my interest and add 2% onto it. In this one, I'll take my interest. Probably made sense to actually set up the constraints after I've made all these changes, but And I'll change this to 0. Change this one to 0.
Interest plus 2% plus 3%.
Right. And change that one to 0. So I'm trying to see, okay, I got my principal, I got my time. I'm going to put in interest, but then I'm wondering, okay, what's going to happen if interest is increased by 1%? What happens if it's increased by 2%, 3%? What's going to happen to the value? So it gives me a little bit of a visual of what's happening. Now our first interest is called TV underscore interest. So I'm going to click my second one. Sometimes it's kind of hard to click, because especially when you make it small like that. Over here on the side in the component tree, you can click it over here. And this one I want to call TV underscore interest. And I'll just say 1 for 1%. And say yes if it comes up and says that.
TV underscore 1.
Yeah. This one I'll call TV underscore interest 2. And this one I'll call TV underscore interest 3. Now we're going to call the same code to calculate our interest. And I know it's just like one line of code. So this still doesn't necessarily show the power of methods, but you'll see the idea anyway. Later on, we're going to work with some other components where we can throw like a for loop or while loop in there, and you can see a little bit more of the power of it. Now I'm gonna clear my constraints, and I'm gonna do my infer constraints, set everything back up again. And let's just run it to make sure everything's working at that point. By the way, if you try to put a plus in there or a percent, I'm guessing it won't work. Probably give you a weird error. Okay, so mine came up. We haven't put the code in yet for those three, but does your emulator say that? Come over to Android Studio and do a stop, and then try to do it again.
Oh my god.
If that doesn't do it, then you probably want to do a cold boot on the phone. Did that work? Maybe. Okay. These emulators don't seem like they're exactly perfect.
Installation failed because the device emulated 5554 disconnected.
Let's see here, buddy. It didn't fail, but it's like not right. That's not right.
Was your constraints messed up?
Like, I did it how I wanted to
Uh-huh.
on
Whoa!
the demo thing, but the constraints is not right on the emulator itself.
My interest 3% is all the way at the top left.
Yeah, you probably want to do a clear and then do infer constraints again. And if it's still not right, then you want to move them a little closer to each other.
It just went on by itself. It's still not working.
Why are the text sizes not the same?
Okay, go to your
They're not the same size.
quick tools. What's that? In your APT manager. And
That's a little bit annoying, but
What? Why is there random zero? My text just keeps moving by itself, so it's just random zero. Stop.
did you do a cold boot on it?
You see what you're mad at this.
Oh, wait, not close it. Yes.
Alright. Alright. Let's see. So this goes.
That didn't do it, go control delete.
Test.
very.
Right.
And the emulator.
Wow, your memory usage.
49%. Whoa!
The emulator. Let's crash.
Well, I'm at 52% usage.
There it went down.
What? You guys want to know what I'm at?
What?
Put the emulator in.
I'm at 36%.
And then close program.
Yeah, it's like studio.
Okay, now try running it.
There we go, Sirius, back down to 40%. 39%.
I'm at 36.
2%. Whoa.
Whoa.
Back to 45. Remember whenever you. Now imagine that going off in Mr.
It's still
I don't think Mr.
running
runs
fast.
dancing. 36%. My CPU is just like crazy. Only at 2% usage on the
Oh, it's probably because I have my whatever on it. So,
almost running at.
If that doesn't do it, then you'll want to do that cold boot.
I'm also running at an average of 3.8
Now let me show you how we'll change this code now.
Look at this 4.
Okay, so we want to go back to our main activity Java. And we want to be able to calculate the interest, but this time we're going to return it so we can assign it to different locations. So this text view here, we're going to put back down. Put back down here. I also need some more, don't I? Text view T5 interest 1 equals text view. Find view by ID r.id.tv interest 1.
you already have T4 interest.
Yeah, this is T5. This is T6.
But your point is having T4 in the other public void.
Oh, I moved it.
But now your T4 is.
If you can move it down.
Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't got there yet. And then interest 2 is equal to text view find view by ID r.id.tv interest 2 and text view T7 underscore interest 3 is equal to text view find view by ID r.id.tv underscore 3. Now, no matter what, we still want to declare principal rate and time. So I get those from the screen here. Our calculate interest now needs to be changed. We want to calculate interest and return the value 4 times because we've got 4 separate locations we want to write it to. Now up here, we no longer want this T4 interest set text. So I can move it down below. I'll drag and drop it down somewhere here. Is this still not working? You got it? The what?
Not the English.
Do we want to put double interest in the principal rate and time now?
You mean here? No, not necessarily. We could. There'd be nothing wrong with it. Or we could do it in one line. The one line can get kind of lengthy if we do it there. But we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now I brought in principal rate and time, and I'm going to change this. Instead of doing a void, I'm going to put a double here. Public double. What this is going to want to do is it's going to want to return something. So I say return interest. So when you call this, you still pass in the same 3 parameters. It's going to go and do the same calculation it did before, interest equal principal times rate times time. But then it's going to return that value to whoever called it. It's kind of the example I gave you. Someone went up front and got the mail. They would return me the mail, wouldn't they? So that's an example of a method, a function, subroutine that returns something. Now, when we call it down here, you notice that this is now broke. Well, that's curious. This should be broke. Why isn't that broke? But anyway, we're returning something, so it shouldn't work. It should be in red now. This is going to return a double. So now, since this is going to return a double, I could write this directly out to my screen. T4 underscore interest dot set text double dot to string. I probably have too many parentheses there, but we'll see. 1, 2, yep, one too many. And somehow I deleted my, what do I call it, calculate interest. One, 2, 3 beginning, so I need 3 closing. Well, let's examine what this is doing. This calculate interest is passing in principal, rate, and time. And then it's calculating the interest, returning it. Then I do the double to string, which is then converting what's returned to a string, and then I'm setting it out to my T4 interest. This is what you were asking if I needed to declare a variable called interest. I could, and then I could have temporarily put it into that variable and then did the double toString on it. You can see when you put too much on one line, it gets kind of clumsy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, I like that idea since it's so far over and you guys can't hardly see it now. If I declare a variable interest, then here I can say interest is equal to calculate interest, principal, rate, time. So then this part right here, I can replace with interest. So this is going to call our method. It's going to pass in these parameters, return the value to interest, and then I'll change the interest to string, and I'll write it out to the string.
I'll leave it as.
Yeah, it's up to you. If you want one line, that's fine. If you want separate lines, that's fine too. And I'm going to get rid of this down here. I'm not sure why I have that twice. Get rid of that.
2.
Now we've got 3 other occurrences that we want to do. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it 3 times. But now I'm going to have T5, T6, and T7. I think I call this interest 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so we'll do. Oh, where is it?
Now those other ones, remember they're increasing by what? The rate is increasing by?
1, 2.
Yeah. So here, for the rate, instead of passing in rate, I'm going to add 0.01. Why does it keep doing that? Didn't seem to break it.
I'll find copy the wrong ones.
Down here, I'll call it 0.02. It's kind of different than normal Java. So this should increase my rate by 1%, this should increase it by 2%, and this should increase it by 3%.
You take time.
The what? I think this rate colon is referring to the parameter name. And it's saying, okay, it's still rate colon, but we're going to do a calculation, if I had to guess.
Oh, here we go.
Let me run mine just to make sure it's correct.
I'm seeing unexpected token.
Let me see if mine's working. Not sure if it finished or not. Let's see. 5,000, 0.03, and time 10 years. And that gives you what it increases by. When it's 1% more, 2% more, 3% more, you see the increase in your amount. So it looks like if your interest is increased by 3%, that'll double your money. So it went from 1,500 to 3,000. Let me go back here so you can compare.
Well, see, I kept mine all in one line.
Oh, let me show you what it looked like at that point. Let me go ahead and give you the project then I'll.
Yeah.
And yeah, the rest of the time for this. But project is just to take this same concept where you're calling a method, and you can return a value if you want. If you just want to call it and have it right to the screen, that's fine. But do that for your force equals mass times acceleration that we've already seen. So force is equal to ma, mass times acceleration. Does that make sense what I'm looking for?
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop the recording and I'll